Baby, you will see.
All right, we got the green light. That means we can go back to talking. All right, welcome to the show, folks. You got the American Adversaries Drive Time Prime Time Show coming to you live on AM 660. The Answer. 407-774-8255 is our phone number as we come to you live from the Mercury Free Broadcasting Studios. Please don't forget, for the very best in health-centered dentistry, use my dentist, Dr. James E. Hardy. You can give him a call at 407-678-3399, and please don't forget to ask him about his...
ever done. And if in the state of Florida, we have faith-based adoption agencies closing down their doors and even foster care adoption, conservative, Republican leadership. Homosexuals are already able to adopt children.
Right.
So this shouldn't be an issue for them. The issue is whether or not they're going to leave faith-based adoption agencies vulnerable. Because what they're doing is they went to, like, Embraced by Grace,
right,
Castleberry, which is a Christian adoption agency, and those lesbian couples said, hey, want to do an adoption. They said, you know, we're sorry, we prefer placements with married mothers and fathers. And as a result of that, they'll use that denial to then go in and attack that adoption agency and bring some things. So really, this is about protecting faith-based agencies. It's not about even homosexual adoption, which is actually going on.
Right.
So I'm praying he's not going to fall prey to this is an Indiana-style bill and all the nonsense that goes along with that.
Right.
I think we got a 50-50 chance, but it's just there's no telling when our opponents start screaming. You have to have a lot of political courage to stand up and say, you know what, we're going to do what's right. So we're hoping that Governor Scott does what's right and vetoes HB 7013.
You're absolutely right, and you're absolutely right, too. This has nothing to do with their ability to adopt children. There are plenty of adoption agencies that they could use. This is, once again, about imposing their lifestyle on other people. And it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. It's they're imposing their lifestyle on other people who don't, want to go down that road, so to speak.
Right.
All right, John, I want to take Al's phone call because he's been holding through the break. Al, I appreciate you holding, and your question for John Stemberger, please.
Hey, no problem. God bless you guys.
Thank you.
Love the show, as always, Chris.
Excellent. Thank you.
John, I guess we got one comment and then I guess a question.
Sure.
One thing, I guess, about this whole Bruce Jenner thing, just want to point out one thing. I doubt that it's so much more about rights and things like that. I think it's more about money. In his 65 years as a man, Bruce Jenner made $100 million. They project him over the next 10 years as Caitlyn Jenner to make $500 million in 10 years. I think it's so much less about their rights and everything, and I think it's more about the money and kind of like their political swing, I guess.
Yeah, they'll never turn down a dollar, that's for sure.
What do you think about the whole 501c3 thing in the government? I mean, what a church should be a church without having to go to the government and say, hey, can I file paperwork to be a church? Since when does the government constitute or not constitute what is and what is not a church? Do you think that it'd be better for churches to start having boards and trusts versus being on the 501c3 side?
All right. Thank you for your question, John.
Thank you.
How much time do we have, Chris, for this?
You got all the time you need. I'll give you all the time you need.
Yeah, a very complicated question. I'll try to drill down and give you laser talk.
Okay.
First of all, the moment that a couple, a husband and wife who's a pastor, gets around their table in their home and says, we're going to start a church, at that moment you start acting, behaving, and collecting money like a church. From the foundation of the republic, that entity, that church, is tax exempt. Okay? You don't need the letter. So the status of a church is tax exempt under the United States Constitution, a.k.a. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion. Okay, so under that premise, the status of a church is tax exempt. And that's not true with every other charity, only a church. So my organization, the 501c3, the Florida Family Policy Council, and other charities, if you're not a church, you have to get the certificate. Now, whether or not a church goes to the government and pays a lawyer like my law firm, we do these. You pay me anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to set up a 501c3 and wait 2 years and get approval by the government and then get your little certificate. Whether you do that or not is your business. But you don't need that, okay? You say, what about Costco when I go to Costco? Well, Costco doesn't want your federal 501c3 tax-exempt status. They want your not-for-profit corporate status with the state of Florida, which doesn't require the federal government's involvement at all. That's just your protection as a corporate entity, as a church, to get, so you're not paying taxes on, animal crackers or whatever you buy.
Right.
So it's not actually even necessary. It's a way that the government actually manipulates churches into doing what they're going to do, saying if you involve yourself too much in political activity, you're going to lose your tax-exempt letter. Well, if you lose your letter, guess what? You still have your status. It doesn't even matter legally. The whole thing's a charade. And so, I'm not saying folks shouldn't have the letter. It's just for convenience sake, though. There's no necessity for it. And so if anybody ever challenges you, they can just show that you're operating and functioning as a church. And so even they might have a letter on you to the IRS, your status will still be tax exempt as a church.
John, Al's question was an excellent question, and it kind of dawns on me that there probably aren't too many pastors out there that understand all this, are there?
No, there aren't. And I lecture about this to pastors literally all over Florida and all over the country with several pastors' organizations. And we're just trying to get pastors to understand it. It's a charade. I mean, even for years, Chris, there have been a Pulpit Freedom Project. Every year there's one Sunday where Alliance Defending Freedom says, Pastor, here's a lawyer, here's a contract, we're going to represent you. Now, for one day in the pulpit, you preach whatever you want to preach. You endorse candidates, you talk about issues, you say whatever you want to say without regard to the quote-unquote rules, okay? And they take those sermons and they send them to the IRS and they say, gentlemen, we believe these sermons, literally thousands of them. We send them to the IRS, the Alliance Defending Freedom.
Right.
They say, gentlemen, please review these. We believe they exceed the limitations of the IRS code, and please enforce. And you know what they do every year, Chris? Absolutely nothing. Because they'd rather manipulate and chill the free speech of pastors in pulpit, have those rules of the 1950s challenged, and see them struck down as unconstitutional, which is exactly what they are.
Right. Yeah, they don't want the fight. They don't want the fight. That says a lot about it, too. Speaking of fighting, I was in a fighting mood when I heard Robert Gates a couple of weeks ago when he said that the Boy Scouts, correct me if I'm wrong, should have gay scout masters. They should open their chapters up to gay scout masters, and not for fairness to the gay man, but to, did I hear this right? So that the children be exposed to this sort of lifestyle, so they'll be sensitive to it?
Yeah, I mean, this is just so sad, because the mission of the Boy Scouts of America, which they never talk about, is actually, get this, it's teaching young people ethics and morals. I mean, that's literally the mission. It's not building character, as they often say. It's teaching young people about ethics and morals. And what are we teaching young people? When your values are under pressure, just change them?
Right.
I mean, when right and wrong, well, change your virtues, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. Yeah. And even Gates, this time around, when he allowed not just youth, but he's saying now we need to have openly gay adults as well, adult leaders, in fact.
Right.
He's not even making a moral argument. He could be saying, look, I think there's justice issue here, whatever, fairness. He's just saying this policy is not sustainable. Just making a purely pragmatic argument.
Right.
Again, what do we say to young people about moral decision-making when he can't even make a moral argument for what he's trying to do? He's saying it's unsustainable, and he's right. We said that when they opened the door, young people, it'll be a matter of 2 years, and then they'll have openly gay adult leaders as well. And the tragedy about this is, Chris, I was very deeply involved with scouting. We knew who the people were that struggled with same-sex attraction in scouting, but they were discreet. They didn't talk about it. They weren't loud and proud. They weren't in your face wearing rainbow flags. But now we're subjecting scouting to that. And I don't want my son around a campfire being introduced to what homosexuality is by some other half-cocked boy thinking he knows what he's doing, and he's expressing his whatever. I mean, that's a private issue that parents ought to be dealing with, but now Scouting has opened the floodgates to that kind of open conversation, because that's what it means to be openly gay.
I know. We talked about this on the show when he made that speech, that announcement. And my feeling is, I don't want the Scoutmaster sitting around talking about what he does with his wife. That's just not the place for that sort of thing in the Boy Scouts. As you said, it's to teach morals and ethics, and what we're teaching them is moral relativism, which is to say that there are no morals. As you say, if you're just going to change it when there's a little bit of public pressure out there, simply saying is it never really existed in the place. That we could be teaching our kids. And you started a great organization, Trail Life USA.
Well, I'm the chairman of the board of Trail Life USA. It's a Christian scouting organization. We've got 23,000 members in 48 states, 550 troops now operating nationwide with a full-time staff of a great professional organization. It's just remarkable to see what's in just in the last 2 years. Folks can go to traillifeusa.com and check out the troop locator and find out there's several troops in Lake County, in Orange County, in Osceola County, popping up everywhere. And so we're excited about Trail Life USA. It's an amazing organization, and we're about turning boys into men, and we're going to do it the right way. They can use their squirt guns. We can play paintball in our program. We're not going to tell you can't throw a water balloon for crying out loud at somebody. I mean, it's just we're going to teach boys how to become men and do it the right way.
I tell you what, when I was in the Boy Scouts, now this was back in the 70s, some of the games that we used to play, the Scoutmasters would probably go to jail for today, John. Because it was pretty rough. We get in some pretty roughhousing stuff. But it was all about teaching, as you said, boys, how to be men. And how to be men who respect women and other men. Just to be a respectful, law-abiding citizen is really what it all boils down to. TrailLifeUSA.com. John, I just have a few minutes left with you. I want to thank you so much for all the time you're spending with us this afternoon. I know you're a real busy man, but we need to do this more often, by the way.
Chris, you have a great show, and I really appreciate you allowing us to talk about what the work we're doing.
All right. Well, listen, one last question for you. Is there anybody in the Republican field right now? Obviously, we need different direction, radical different direction. Is there anybody in the Republican field who you feel could pull us in that direction and could get the country to back him?
Well, that's a loaded question. I'm not prepared to endorse quite yet. There's a lot of people I like. Here's the good news. We got some amazing candidates. There's a couple of bad apples in the group, but for the most part, man, we've got an amazing lineup of men who are solid in their worldview. They get it economically, socially, and have a faith component. So really, it's going to be hard to make a bad choice. And so that's the good news. But we need to have somebody that can win the primary and win the general election. That's a very strategic thing. I think that, I think Marco Rubio has that ability. I think he's a very dynamic speaker, and I think Huckabee has that ability to reach over both sides. He won like over 45% of the black vote when he was governor of Arkansas.
Yeah.
I think even Jindal, although he's not really registering anywhere, I think if he was in the general, he could have the potential. But I think a lot of these second-tier candidates, they're just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. The real question is Bush going to take it, or is somebody going to challenge him? That's the real question.
Yeah.
And I think that, but even Jeb Bush, as much as people are set at immigration and Common Core, and even to some degree his stand on marriage, although he's tried to shore that up.
Yeah.
He's not a John McCain or a Mitt Romney. I mean, this is the guy at least stood for something when he's governor. So that's, even if it ends up being Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney, you looked into his ideological soul, and there was just a little Mitt Romney statue there, really. He stood for no first principle, economically or pragmatic, journey to the White House. But Jeb Bush, he stands for something as well. And so I think, it's going to be an amazing time, but I think conservatives need to unite, get behind one candidate, and we can perhaps control the process.
John, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been very enlightening.